بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وافتح لنا فتوح العارفين آمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome once again to another episode of our series on the Quran in the month of Ramadan. We're just going to continue where we left off. The author he mentions and he says, and he quotes Ali ibn Abi Talib, Amir al-Mu'mineen. So he said, وَقَدْ رَوَيْنَا في مسند الإمام المجمع على حفظه وإمامته أبي محمد الدارمي رحمه الله. So he says, the author, and it was narrated and transmitted to us in the Musnad, or the hadith collection with the isnad of the Imam who is, everyone is in agreement in relation and in recognition of this person's expertise in knowledge of hadith, and also in the fact that they are also an Imam. And his name is Abi Muhammad ad-Darimi, rahimahullah ta'ala, may Allah have mercy upon his soul, in which he narrated عن علي بن أبي طالب, on the authority of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu, may Allah be pleased with him, أنه قال, that he said. So this is a statement that's said by Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said, قال يا حملة العلم, O you people who carry knowledge. So he is addressing who, and he's speaking to who? A people of knowledge. So he's saying, يا حملة العلم, O people who carry knowledge, اعملوا به, act upon that which you know, meaning act upon the knowledge. فإنما العالم من عمل بما علم, for indeed the true learned person is the one who acts upon that which they learnt. ووافق علمه عمله or عمله, and there is a it coincides, their knowledge complements their action, and the action complements the knowledge. And then he said, when he was addressing them, he said, وَسَيَكُونُ أَقْوَامٌ يَحْمِلُونَ الْعِلْمَ لَا يُجَاوِزُ تَرَاقِيَهُ. So he said, there will come a time in which there will be people who will carry a lot of knowledge, but it would not go further than the collarbone and the bone and the passage in the neck. It will not go further than that. Meaning, the only relationship that they actually have with knowledge is speaking, and that's it. Meaning, their action does not complement in any way whatsoever their knowledge, what they've learnt, and what they know. Then he said, the author, Ali ibn Talib, يُخَالِفُ عَمَلُهُمْ عِلْمَهُمْ. In fact, their actions contradict their knowledge. يخالفون or يخالف عملهم علمهم. So their actions, that which they're doing, completely contradicts. So you have a situation in which people are doing the complete opposite of what they're supposed to do. So their knowledge, their action, that which they're doing, completely goes against that which they've learnt. Okay, and it goes against the knowledge ingrained within the Sharia. وتخالف, then he said, Ali ibn Abi Talib, وتخالف سريرتهم علانيتهم, and their inward reality, okay, contradicts their outward reality. Okay, that's what he's saying. So their inward reality contradicts their outward reality. يجلسون حلقا يباهي بعضهم بعضا. They set up circles of knowledge, or they set up their own. This is what he's saying, Ali, because they set up their own places of teaching, so their own platforms, in which they're competing with one another. Okay, does that remind you of anything? يجلسون حلقا يباهي بعضهم بعضا. They set up their own platform, places of learning. Hilaq comes from it's the plural of halaqa. So halaqa is a gathering in which a person learns knowledge. Okay, so they set up these places in which they compete with one another. حتى إن الرجل, the author he says, Ali ibn Talib, sorry, he says, حتى إن الرجل لَيَغْضَبُ عَلَى جَلِيسِهِ أَنْ يَجْلِسَ إِلَى غَيْرِهِ وَيَدَعُهُ. He said, so much so that one of these people who have knowledge, meaning they only have the outward knowledge, it doesn't complement the inside, the inward reality, they would get upset, they become angry when one of the people who would attend or who attends their own circle leaves them and goes to somebody else. Imagine. So he's saying, Ali ibn Abi Talib, so much so that one of them would hate and really dislike and become upset if they were to know that one of their own students leaves them and goes somewhere else. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, this is a lot of this is what's going on today, unfortunately, in which you have times and you have situations in which people become upset over these kind of things, which really shouldn't. I mean, if a person does have if a learned person does have a gathering or people who benefit from it, it shouldn't really upset them if they were to go and learn also from somebody else. Ultimately, if the goal is one, which is to learn something, then it shouldn't really be a problem. But a problem would only arise if it's more than that, if the issue is actually more than that, which is more about fame, more about competition, as who has more people following them, and who is more famous than who, and all of that. Once that comes into the picture, then these kind of actions become a bit more understandable. But look what Ali ibn Abi Talib said as a conclusive statement to their reality. He said, "Ulaika, those types of people, لا تسعد أعمالهم في مجالسهم تلك إلى الله تعالى." He said, those types of people, their actions do not ascend, even though they're doing something which is seemingly positive and good, meaning teaching and educating people. Their actions would not reach Allah. That's what he's saying. It doesn't ascend to Allah. This is in the Musnad of Imam ad-Darimi. So it's something which is really something to ponder over and something to think about. I mean, it always goes back down to the intentions as to why we're doing what we're doing in the first place. Why do people do what they do? Okay, and are there ulterior motives for why people might want to do something which is seemingly good, a good action, a good deed? I mean, and that's where it becomes a problem, and that's where it becomes an issue. وقد صح, the author, he says, وقد صح عن الإمام الشافعي رحمه الله تعالى أنه قال. So this is a statement made by Imam al-Shafi'i, the great scholar. And he said, and this is an authentic quotation. He said, أنه قال, that he said, so this is a statement by Imam al-Shafi'i. He said, وَدِدْتُ أن هذا الخلق تعلموا هذا العلم يعني علمه وكتبه على ألا ينسب إلي حرف منه. He said, Imam al-Shafi'i, I wish I would have loved that the knowledge I have would have been extracted from me, okay, and that the people would have learnt the knowledge that I've gained, and on the condition that it would not have been ascribed to me whatsoever, that I could have completely ghosted the situation. Nobody would have known who I was. I wish it could have happened in that way. That's what he's saying. This is obviously showing you the level of sincerity that he has. And he was really being very serious. I would have loved that I would be able to impart with what I know without people ever knowing it came from me, and that it wasn't ascribed to me. So, and in fact, he even made dua saying, I prayed made dua to Allah that he would not be somebody who, he would not be somebody who knowledge is ascribed to. Imagine. And some of the scholars, they said, actually, if you really think about it, his dua actually came true. Why is that? Because even in his madhab, Imam al-Shafi'i's madhab, when people want to speak about any case or any issue or any of the masail in his madhab or in his legal tradition, people will often quote people who are not Imam al-Shafi'i. So they will quote Imam al-Nawawi, for example, who was a Shafi'i jurist, or they will quote Imam Abi Hamid al-Ghazali, for example, or Imam al-Haramain, or they will quote, for example, Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, or they will quote al-Ramli, or they'll quote Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari, or they'll quote many other people who are ascribed, they themselves subscribe to the legal tradition of Imam Shafi'i, but they will never really say Imam Shafi'i said this. So some of the scholars, they would say that, in fact, actually, if you really think about it, despite the fact that Imam Shafi'i is a household name, whenever we're talking about masail or issues pertaining to fiqh, we don't really quote Imam Shafi'i as having saying this and that, but people who are subscribed to his madhab. So was his dua accepted? Perhaps, Allahu A'lam. Many of the scholars, they say actually it was. So he said, very clearly showing his sincerity, I wish I could have, imparted with the knowledge on the condition that it wouldn't have been ascribed to me, and that I could have been, nobody would have known where it came from. He said, I would have preferred it to be like that, And he even said, Allah yunsabi ilayya harfu minhu, even one jot, one harf, one letter, I wouldn't even want one letter to be ascribed to me. And if that could have been something that could have happened, I would have wished that it was the case. And then the author, he goes on to the next chapter, speaking about the akhlaq, or speaking about the characteristics of the teacher of the Quran. So what are the characteristics that should be found in a person who is teaching the Quran? So the author, he says, وَيَنْبَغِي لِلْمُعَلِّمِ أَنْ يَتَخَلَّقَ بِالْمَحَاسِنِ الَّتِي وَرَدَ الشَّرْعُ بِهَا. So the author, he begins and he says, it's incumbent that the teacher, meaning the teacher of Quran, embodies themselves, with the best characteristics that has been mentioned in the Sharia. وَالْخِلَالِ الْحَمِيدَةِ وَشَيِّمِ الْمَرْضِيَّةِ الَّتِي أَرْشَدَ إِلَيْهَا. And also that they characterize themselves with that which is praiseworthy and that which is pleasurable, that which the Sharia has alluded to. And he's going to give us examples. So he says, مِنَ الزَّهَادَةِ فِي الدُّنْيَا. So for somebody who's not extremely connected to this worldly life. So if you have somebody who's always with the glitter and the glamour and always chasing the glory, then this is a sign that this person's a bit too attached. The author is saying there should be some level of detachment from this worldly life. Az-Zahada is referring to somebody who has detachment from this worldly life. A person who's teaching you, because the Quran teaches that a person should detach from this worldly life, and it teaches you about the importance of the afterlife. So if the person teaching you the Quran is somebody who's attached to this worldly life, then it's problematic. This is an example of somebody who's going against, the injunctions and the teachings of the Quran. The author says, وَالتَّقَلُّلِ مِنْهَا, and also somebody who's somewhat withdrawn also from the worldly life. So meaning they only take that which they need. If somebody is living an extremely glamorous lifestyle, then this kind of goes against the spirit of the Quran itself. Because the Quran teaches us that this worldly life is an abode and it's a temporary station to the afterlife. So if that's what it is, if you're traveling, you only take that which you need to. And when I'm talking about the journey, I'm not talking about the destination. If you're going on a journey, you only take that which you need to suffice you for that journey. So you take, because this is dunya, the whole concept of this worldly life in the Islamic tradition is that it's like a journey. كن في الدنيا كأنك ريب عابر السبيل. The Prophet said in the hadith, be in this worldly life like, you are somebody who's a stranger, somebody who's traveling. So you only take, the essential items along with you, to sustain you on that journey. You don't go beyond that. You don't take your house with you, or you don't take all of your possessions with you. You take that which you need to suffice you on your journey, so that you reach your destination safely. So you take that which you need. So the teacher of Quran should be somebody who embodies this characteristic. Somebody who's not living an extremely glamorous lifestyle. Somebody who's takes from the world that which they need. The author then he says, وَعَدَمِ الْمُبَالَاةِ بِهَا وَبِأَهْلِهَا. And also, a person who's learning the Quran or teaching the Quran should be somebody who's not too engaged with competing in issues in this worldly life, and also with its people. So it's something which is very important for then a person to kind of um, really embody. I mean, this stuff sometimes might be considered difficult for people, but that's actually something that's a reality. It's not easy for somebody to do this. But if you're somebody who's teaching the Quran, you're teaching the revelation itself, then a person should abide by the revelation. It's just that simple, really. So it kind of goes against and it defeats the purpose. When a person is competing and is competing with others, in this worldly life, and they're teaching the Quran at the same time. So that's something that a person should avoid. So the author then he says, وَالسَّخَاءِ وَالْجُودِ. So a person should have as-sakha wal-jud. As-sakha wal-jud, they're both terms which are quite close, متقاربان. And it means a person who's kind and generous. A person who has somewhat level of generosity, they overlook, and a pleasant, they have a pleasant demeanor. وَمَكَارِمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ. The Prophet he said in an authentic hadith, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. Because I was only sent to perfect the best of character, the loftiest of all characteristic itself. So this is what a person of Quran should embody themselves with, the best characteristics, because they're teaching the revelation. And the Prophet ﷺ was the first teacher of the Quran, and he was the one who had the best characteristic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even said this and confirmed and acknowledged and made everybody recognize this fact. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. And you, O Muhammad, are on an exalted level of character. So a high standard for good character is what a teacher should have. وَطَلَاقَةِ الْوَجْهِ, having a pleasant face to look at, somebody having a smiling face. Talaqatul wajh means somebody who loosens up, not somebody who's always angry, stringent, always looks miserable, angry, always. That's not really how it should be, because the Quran is bishara. The Quran is giving good news. So a person should always be welcoming, have a very kind look, and that's how a teacher of Quran should be. That's what the author is saying. من غير خروج إلى حد الخلاعة. Though then he says, without this person going to the extreme also on the other side. It shouldn't be somebody who's always messing around or all of that kind of stuff. Somebody who has an appropriate level of balance. Okay? ومن غير خروج إلى حد الخلاعة. So a person should always make sure that they're somewhat always balanced. والحلم والصبر. Al-hilm means, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-halim. So al-hilm, it could be referred to as being kindness, and it could also refer to as being having forbearance. So should a teacher have forbearance? Absolutely. Wa sabr, also patience. These are qualities that a teacher should have. Wa tanazzuhi an dani al-iktisab. And a Quran teacher should be somebody who doesn't make their living in something which is lowly. Okay, so should a Quran teacher also be a part-time beggar, for example? No, of course not. So a person shouldn't make their means or their livelihood through something which is looked down upon in society, like begging, for example. Work is work. So long as the work is halal, that's fine. But what is really the way we would be able to understand this would probably be somebody who's begging, because that's something that's society doesn't really, nobody would consider that to be a good way of making a livelihood. Okay, so that's an example of a Quran teacher shouldn't be doing something like that at the same time. There's an honor, and there's a level of prestige when it comes to teaching the Quran. So a person should also have that status in society, because when they see a teacher of Quran, they should see somebody who is an asset to the society, somebody who is respected as a status. So they shouldn't be doing something which would cause people to question this person's their status and their reputation. Or then he says, وَمُلَازَمَةِ الْوَرَعِ وَالْخُشُوعِ. A person who's teaching Quran should always embody themselves with being, devout and having khushu', meaning being in a state of consciousness of Allah, al-khushu', and al-wara', being devout to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly. So they should be people who do not contradict what's taught in the Quran. So if they're teaching the Quran, they should also embody being people who don't do the haram. Having al-wara' means that a person doesn't engage easily in that which is doubtful and that which is haram. Al-khushu' meaning this person's always in a state of tranquility in front of Allah, always conscious of Allah's presence. Was-sakinati wal-waqar. They should be people who are tranquil, in a state of serenity and calmness. They should be people who are not really, they shouldn't be impulsive beings. So they should be people who have a level of calm, and they should be calm and collected. وَالتَّوَاضُعِ وَالْخُضُوعِ. So they should have a tawadu', the author he says, meaning they should be humble, وَالْخُضُوعِ, and it's very similar wordings. So a tawadu' referring to being humble, and al-khudu' meaning they should be submissive to Allah. They should be in a state of complete acceptance of the divine will. وَاجْتِنَابِ الضَّحِكِ. The author he says they should avoid laughing constantly. So it just comes with the respect. So a person who's a teacher of Quran shouldn't excessively laugh. وَالْإِكْثَارِ مِنَ الْمَزْحِ, and shouldn't excessively joke also. Even though the author he says they should completely, the author he says, hey, teacher of Quran should not laugh. Shouldn't be somebody, because you're teaching the Quran is very serious, and it's the revelation. وَالْإِكْثَارِ مِنَ الْمَزْحِ, not joking too much, the author he says. وَمُلَازَمَةِ الْوَظَائِفِ الشَّرْعِيَّةِ, and he should always, or she should always, embody themselves with the injunctions of the Sharia. For example, كَالتَّنَظُّفِ, like being clean all the time, بِإِزَالَةِ الْأَوْسَاخِ, by always removing any dirt that's on them. So meaning there should be a level of hygiene, there should be a high standard of hygiene that's followed by people who are teaching the Quran. Okay, the author he mentions and he says, بِإِزَالَةِ الْأَوْسَاخِ وَالشُّرُوعِ الَّتِي وَرَدَ الشَّرْعُ بِإِزَالَتِهَا. So the person should remove any dirt or anything else that the Sharia has enjoined for this person to remove. كَقَصِّ الشَّارِبِ, like trimming the mustache, for example. وَتَقْلِيمِ الْأَظْفَارِ, by clipping the nails. وَتَسْرِيحِ اللِّحْيَةِ, and combing the beard. وَإِزَالَةِ الرَّوَائِحِ, and removing any smell that is offensive. So وَإِزَالَةِ الرَّوَائِحِ الْكَرِيهَةِ وَالْمَلَابِسِ الْمَكْرُوهَةِ, and to not wear any clothes which are disliked. Okay, so a person should take care of, in other words, a person should take care of their appearance. A person who's teaching Quran should always make sure that their appearance is well looked after, because they are now representing, the prophets, because the prophets were the ones who taught divine knowledge. So they are also now teaching the Quran. Therefore, they should always be conscious of that and make sure that they appear well in front of others. The other thing he says, and he speaks now about the inward reality, which is probably arguably the most important. It's always the most important. وَلْيَحْذَرْ كُلَّ الْحَذَرِ مِنَ الْحَسَدِ وَالرِّيَاءِ وَالْعُجْبِ وَاحْتِقَارِ غَيْرِهِ وَإِنْ كَانَ دُونَهُ. So the author says, always be very careful, extremely careful from envy, being envious towards other people, وَالرِّيَاء, showing off, وَالْعُجْبِ, having self-amazement, وَاحْتِقَارِ غَيْرِهِ, looking down upon other people. The author says, وَإِنْ كَانَ دُونَهُ, even if they are lower than you, even if they are in a lower position than you are. So meaning, you shouldn't look down upon anybody, even if they are in a position which is inferior to your own. So a person should always make sure that they don't ever look down upon anybody else. I mean, it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who put you in that position anyway. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He wanted, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could take that position away. and give it to somebody else, and even give it to the one whom you used to look down upon. Imagine Allah subhanahu Fir'aun, he used to look down upon Bani Israel, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevated Musa alayhi salam, who was from Bani Israel, above Fir'aun. That's the nature of the world we live in. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, تِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. These are the alternate days that we give, that we give. One day is for you, the next day is against you. Or another day, one day is for you, another day, you're down in the dumps. That's just the nature of this worldly life. Then he says, وَيَنْبَغِي أَنْ يَسْتَعْمِلَ الْأَحَادِيثَ الْوَارِدَةَ فِي التَّسْبِيحِ وَالتَّهْلِيلِ وَنَحْوِهِمَا مِنَ الْأَذْكَارِ وَالدَّعَوَاتِ. So the author, he says, a person who teaches Quran should always regularly incorporate and use many of the ahadith that speak or that talk about at-tasbih wa tahleel. So meaning they should embody the tasbih meaning saying subhanallah, so adhkar generally speaking, at subhanallah, or tahleel is saying la ilaha illallah, and similar to it, min al-adhkar wa da'awat, from the remembrances and the supplications. So a person who's a Quran teacher should always be in regular remembrance of Allah and always supplicating through that which was mentioned in the authentic prophetic traditions. وَأَنْ يُرَاقِبَ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى فِي سِرِّهِ وَعَلَانِيَتِهِ. And this person should always understand and always be conscious and always be aware of Allah's presence, and that Allah is overlooking this person's affairs. And this person should always have Allah in their conscious, in secret and in open. So in inwardly, the person's always conscious of Allah, and outwardly, the person's always conscious of Allah also. Then he says, وَيُحَافِظَ عَلَى ذَلِكَ. Make sure you look after that. وَأَنْ يَكُونَ تَعْوِيلُهُ فِي جَمِيعِ أُمُورِهِ عَلَى اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. And let this person's trust in everything, or every circumstance, be upon Allah. So let their reliance always, in every situation, always be on Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all tawfiq and understanding. Inshallah, we end this episode with that. Jazakumullah khair until next time. Assalamu alaikum